Hi everybody, welcome to Control on Compete. Today we're joined by Mark Bryceland. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good, really excited to be here and ready to chat some rubbish, to be honest with you.
That's fine, so it'll be better than the fantasy football chat we've just done for the last 10 minutes.
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to win my fantasy league this year. I've had a bit of a stinker the last 2 years, so...
Is it just between you and all your mates?
I've got a few different leagues. Gamers League, Mates League, all sorts, but...
So the Gamers League is just boys that you know that like gaming, but it's in a separate league with the fantasy football?
No, so I've got one league with all my pals from like COD, from like COD Esports, and then I've got one from my pals from home. Basically, so that's the two.
So there's ones that you can really lay into.
To be honest, I would win more money on the gamers one, but there's more bragging rights with one of my mates. To be honest, so I want to win that one.
Right,
more so.
The producer of the show, we done one as I said, and like there was no money involved. It was just. I'm so glad we actually drew in points, as I said before.
Yeah.
I'm so glad none of us won. I don't know what it's going to be like this year. Somebody's going to be crying, probably me. Mark, tell me a bit about your background. I know that certainly Call of Duty's been your career, and I've actually followed your career for quite a while. I was, you know, when we started doing esports, I was having a look at the players and Scottish guys that were doing well, and you were definitely one of them through Johnny Boyle with Skelp.
Yeah.
You made me aware of yourself. So tell me then, how did you get involved in it, and how did you become good at it? And like, you know, tell me about young Mark. What was it like growing up?
I mean, to be honest, it was so long ago now when I first got into it.
It can't be that long ago. What age are you now, Mark?
I'm 30 now.
I'm 45, so it wasn't that long ago.
No, but I was competing when I was like 14.
Right.
So I've been doing this for like 16 years now at this point, so over half my life probably. Yep. You know, if you work out all the hours that I've probably put in, it's quite a substantial amount of time. When I was growing up, I was always into video games, playing with my mates. It would be one of those ones, we'd go around to each other's houses, watching each other playing games. And then maybe around when I was 14, when Call of Duty 4 came out, basically started playing that. Got into the competitive side through a website called Game Battles, which was owned by MLG. Basically playing the online ladders there.
Right.
Started off obviously not being very good, but eventually kind of just made my way up, got better and better.
So a lot of kids did play that, but do you think were you in the minority of people that started going down the competitive route with it then? Because a lot of people would have been happy playing with their pals, doing their multiplayer and leaving it there. Did you feel you're better than your pals? That's what you're thinking, or
honestly, no.
Or your pals telling you to go and do it and stop beating them?
No, my pals were honestly better than me, to be honest with you. When we used to play at first, it was just one of those ones where I kind of like outlasted them. To be honest, I think they all like. I still had the passion for it. They maybe started playing other games, maybe stopped gaming entirely. And I attended my first event when I was like 17. But like I said, at that point in time, like from like 14 to 17, it was playing online with my friends, and then eventually, you know, meeting other people. It was all just Scottish boys at this point, but then, you know, as we started getting better, we were recruiting like English players into our team, Irish players, and then eventually it was like a mixture of just different players from UK and Ireland, and then, you know, started moving up the ranks, and then found out about things like LAN events and stuff like that, and went to my first LAN event, didn't do well, but that's kind of what really, you know, got me into it, is just seeing, you know, the competition at the highest level within Europe at that point in time. So and then kind of just kept going from there, kept making my way up to the top, and then I think I was 18 when I got asked to join a pro team called TCM Gaming at the time. I don't think they exist anymore, but basically got asked to join them. Done pretty well, got second at my very first pro event, I beat the team that had just won the Call of Duty World Championship, beat the team that had just came second at the Call of Duty World Championship, so it was very much like a really strong start for my career as a pro Call of Duty player. But at this point in time, it was still very, you know, you weren't getting paid very much money. Pretty much all the money you were earning was through prize money. I think I got a salary of like 200 quid a month or something like that, you know what I mean? So,
What involved that? Go back down to per hour then? You think about the time you spent into the game?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
2p an hour?
Aye, probably like 1p an hour.
Do you enjoy that 1p?
Aye, 100%. Half the time I didn't even get paid on time as well, to be fair. But like, I've been kind of through esports, and since, obviously esports has been about for, you know, since the late 90s, early 2000s, but from Call of Duty esports sense, I've been about since kind of the very beginning, really.
And tell me then about COD in a sense. So, would you say there's a specialist role? Obviously, when you play Call of Duty, everyone starts saying you can get your different guns and classes, snipers. Is there you a specific guy in the COD team? Like, what is it you do? Like,
well, like back in the day,
like you're a sniper guy, or like, you know.
Yeah. I know what you mean. So basically, in competitive Call of Duty, there's like 4 kind of roles. There's like a main AR player who's basically, you know, he's like the backline, and that's the role I was. And then there's like a flex player. He's like an AR as well, but he'll sometimes put an SMG, play really aggressive. And then you'll have 2 like SMGs. One of them maybe be a bit more like objective orientated. One of them will be a bit more like aggressive. That's kind of how the makeup of Call of Duty has been for the last maybe, you know, 12, 13 years. But at first, when I first got into it, it was just kind of use whatever gun you wanted, you know what I mean, whatever you felt was right in the moment. I think the way it's played competitively has developed over the years.
Is it team deathmatch or search and destroy, or what's the mode?
So basically, I mean, it changes every year. When I first got into COD competitive, it was like capture the flag and search and destroy. The only game mode that has been in competitive Call of Duty every year since its inception has been search and destroy. Apart from that, you have different game modes. Like this year, you have like hardpoint, control, search and destroy.
Hardpoint's good fun.
Yeah, hardpoint's been pretty much a core part of competitive Call of Duty as well for the last like 12 years as well. So, you know, you've got different game modes depending on the game, because the way Call of Duty works is with the developers, you've got Treyarch, Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward. So basically you have all these different developers who kind of prioritize, I guess, different game modes. Like for example, Treyarch created Control, so they usually have Control in all their competitive games. You know?
How can you be involved in a game that's made by 3 different? How closely do they work together, do you think?
From what I know, I think they definitely work closely together. There's a lot of features that kind of transfer over between games. Obviously now with Warzone being so big, they have to collaborate a lot on that. But in the multiplayer sense, I think they're very much still trying to like kind of one up each other. You know, they're always trying to, you know, create new features, innovate in their own little studios.
Do you think? Or is that a good thing for Call of Duty, or is that a bad thing for the esports side? Like, do you know what I mean? So there's 2 different things, right?
Yeah.
So
I think there's pros and cons to each side, because sometimes there's innovation or, you know, good ideas from one studio, and then the other studio is reluctant to want to bring it over, which obviously causes issues. But then maybe there's something bad that one studio does and the other studio doesn't, and then, do you know what I mean? So it's kind of goes both ways.
Do you think that'll change now the Xbox are running the show ultimately?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Because you'd think then, in a sense, you got all these different teams. Do you think the fact they've got different teams is because of the stress to have one out every year? Or, to make sure that everyone's working in that kind of cycle, to make sure your game's going to be out in 3 years' time. Yeah. You've got that runway.
Exactly.
Do you think that's the way it's...
I think that's why they do it, because they just make so much money off just releasing a game every year. I'm sure if they wanted to, they could take their time, all collaborate together, release a game every 2 or 3 years. But ultimately, every year Call of Duty breaks records and sells so much. So I think that they're probably not going to do that. No. I mean, if I was in charge of that business, I would do the same thing as what they're doing. But as a player, I'm now a coach in Call of Duty. It's one of those things where, from a competitive sense, it probably would be better if we were playing the same game for a number of years.
For the players,
I can understand like both perspectives, really. But it's the life we live.
People don't understand how much you've got to, from each year, each game, you've got to change. The mechanics, in a sense, the Black Ops was the new mechanic, was it not, with the sliding or
the Omni movement? The Omni movement. Current Call of Duty, it was the first time. So basically, I mean, there's been sliding in a few different titles. This year specifically, they Omni movement, so you can basically sprint and look in all directions. Before it was just like, if you're sprinting, you're running forward. Yep. Now you can like sprint sideways. And there's so many different things you can do. Obviously, you can dive sideways. It's a very much like a higher skill ceiling mechanic that they've added in. But at the same time, it's obviously took a long time to get used to.
I can imagine. It's a big stress to the players. So, okay, I want to go back a bit. Which company thought we'll put the turtles in it? And which company thought we'll put Beavis and Butthead in it?
I don't know. Well, it's Treyarch. It's Treyarch that make the current COD.
What do you think about that then? When you think about your game and like it being like, obviously it's war and it's quite serious, and I suppose people like it, and then suddenly they're maybe now playing against or shooting a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have an opinion on it, to be honest. I think it's funny. I think there's people who are maybe on the more extreme end, the purists that are like, oh, this is a military sim, this needs to be, you know, like war, but ultimately there's so many other features in the game that aren't realistic. So like,
for me, air strikes and And
yeah, for me, it's, you know, even like the way the guns behave isn't how the guns would behave in real life. So it's just one of those things where I think it's like an arcade competitive shooter which is based in a military world, but it's not, you know, a direct military sim per se. So I think it's, for me, I'm not complaining about it.
And when I spoke to you yesterday, we won't go off the game too much, but you spoke about the new Battlefield.
Yeah.
Right? I'm glad you reminded me, because I was, you know, I played a wee bit last weekend and the beta's back out. That's like a war sim, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy. Did you enjoying the new Battlefield?
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving playing with my mates. My mates are like, obviously, I play on a PC now, but COD's still like played for the most part with a controller.
Why is that, do you think?
It's the movement, I'd say. I'd probably say it's the movement because just in general, like.
So do you think then, omnidirectional, when you think about it, I know a keyboard and mouse, I suppose you probably couldn't get. That's one bit the controller would win, would it not?
Yeah, I mean there is competitive players that play. Well, in like the CDL, you're only allowed to use a controller, but in Warzone competitive, you're allowed to use a mouse and keyboard as well as a controller, and the vast majority of players are still controller players. There is a few pro players that are like keyboard and mouse, but I think it depends on the game. I think in Call of Duty, just because of, like you said, the omni movement and stuff like that, the way the guns shoot, there's not much recoil in a lot of the weapons. Right. I think the real skill gap is movement, and it's not really like the shooting aspect of the game. So that's why I think there's a slight advantage to the people that play on controller, and then obviously there's aim assist and all that sort of stuff as well, which has also been tweaked quite a bit since I started competing.
More so aim assist, or
there's the aim assist is heavier now than it used to be back.
Do you think that's because they want the kind of skill gap for people to join that are new? They want more people to buy the game.
Exactly. No, it's a money making scheme. It's a money making thing.
I know.
Like the average, I seen a stat. It was maybe like a year ago. I seen this stat. I seen like the average public accuracy or whatever has like almost like doubled since like 2008, which just means it's easier to aim and shoot essentially. So it's one of those ones. I think the general skill level of like the public has probably increased slightly, but I don't think it's double. It's quite clearly when you play, if you go back and play an old Call of Duty, you can tell the aim assist is so much less.
But in a sense, right, when you think about it, right, because you're talking about, right, when did the first person shooter come out? You had like Doom, etc., things like that, but that was mostly keyboard.
That was keyboard,
right? So the first kind of first person would have been like your Halos and your Call of Duties, right? So then that would have came. What age did you say that it was? Like I would have been like probably.
Well, I played Call of Duty 4 when I was like 13, 14. But I mean, Call of Duty, the original one, and like Halo 1, etc., came out like early 2000s, I want to say, like 2000, 2001.
Because do you know what? My little boy Jackson, he plays his Roblox, right? Yeah. Now, obviously, there's a million games that you can get on Roblox, right? He actually clicked on one yesterday, and it played just like one of the old CODs.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I swear to God, if I told you like what the game this was, you'd think, oh, is that an old Call of Duty? But that's, I suppose, right away he's getting that. So I suppose there's younger kids that maybe took him off. I don't know if he's sitting shooting guns all the time, right? But there's probably a generation that are going to get more used to that at an earlier level. So maybe there's a bit of both in that, eh? Like
yeah, no, 100%. I've actually seen those clips. I think Roblox actually has quite a few like mods like and stuff like that. You can pretty much do everything on the game.
Transformers ones are cool.
Yeah. I've seen like loads of clips. I've seen clips of like the Call of Duty mods on Roblox, and they generally at some points look better than some of the Call of Duties that they've released over the last few years, which is mental. But yeah, I've never played them personally, so I don't really know much about it. But
oh, you don't want to be getting back into Roblox. I mean, it's a massive, it's an absolute monster, right? But yeah. So tell me about your playing career, though, right? Like, tell me, you've won loads. You tell me. I mean, I've got it written down here. Like, is it 7 European Championships?
Yeah.
Come on, that's good. Like,
yeah.
Tell me about some of your tournaments and.
I mean, well, like I said, I first started attending events 2010, and then I became a pro player in 2012, 2013, like that season. I didn't win my first event until like I think it was December. It was like around my birthday, 2013. So it was actually Call of Duty Ghosts. It was at the time. That was my first event when it was an I-Series event.
Call of Duty Ghosts, right? Yeah. I remember that part for that.
Yeah, it was I-52 or something like that, one of the Insomnia events. That was my first event win, and then I won a few more. I won, I think, 2 more events that year. So maybe I had like a 3-4 year stretch where I won, majority of my competitions I was in. was one of the first players to internationally perform really well. My first American event didn't do too great, but then the second one, no European team had ever came in the top 8 at an international event before, and my team went all the way and finished third of the event at MLG Anaheim in 2014. I'm trying to remember all the years at this point.
You're doing well, mate.
2014. But yeah, first event, like I said back at the start of the pod, was my first pro event. I got second, beating like a bunch of big teams. So I think my expectations for myself at that point were pretty high. And you know, nowadays there's a lot of European players that are having a lot of success, but at this point in time in Call of Duty esports, it was very much like a NA American, Canadian dominated esport. No European team had placed inside the top 8 at an international event.
Why do you think that was? What do you think was different?
Just more competition, I feel like.
More chance to compete and...
Yeah, I'd say at that point in time as well, esports was slightly more developed maybe within the US. I mean, it's still just slightly bigger there, I'd say, but at the same time, it's obviously grown in stature within the UK now, but I think just in general, they have way more players as well. I think Europe was a strong region, but unlike the US, where everyone, for the most part, speaks the very same language, we had, you know, French teams, Swedish teams, German teams, Italian teams, and all these things. And there was talented players in all those groups, but a lot of the time, like, everyone would stick to teaming with the people from their own country because of the language barrier, because obviously communication is such an important factor. So essentially what ended up happening was a lot of these talented players from outside of the UK, for the most part, usually kind of got left. And faded away, like didn't do well at tournaments, so eventually they kind of hang it up or whatever. And at this point in time, between the years of like 2010 to 2014, 15, there was not very much money involved in Call of Duty. Like I said, I was, you know, winning or finishing well in the majority of tournaments, but still at the same time, I wasn't earning like a crazy amount of money. I was earning enough to live on, and like good money for the age I was at that point in time. But nowadays, like the players are making, you know, crazy amounts of money in salaries and you know, prize money. I won my first event. I won 200 quid, I think it was, and it was like 200 quid, a headset and a monitor. I think that was the prize. But now that, I was happy. I think I sold the headset and monitor for more than the actual prize money. But nowadays, like at the CDL level, you know, you win an event, you win COD champs, you're winning 250 grand each. You know what I mean? So it's like
so here's the thing, right? Sometimes obviously money takes the fun out of everything. Right? Ultimately, right? Yeah. So how do you feel like those? I mean, once again, I was going to talk about your transition into coaching. So what would you maybe talk about that then? So I suppose you're coaching now. What do you think the difference is with these players when you grew up? Do you think you grew up in a kind of a golden age of COD, like having fun, and like you're saying about now it's really serious? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, it's completely different now. I'd say like the players who were about them were, you know, for the passion for being the best,
and they enjoyed it.
Yeah, they just truly enjoyed it because a lot of them would not be earning very much money at all. Like, and most of the time, you know, the general age of the players at this point in time, because you were able to compete when you were under 18 at this stage, you know, you had players that were aged like 14 to like 21. Like an old player in this period of time was like 23, and now that's like the general kind of average age of the league players. So like that was at that point in time considered old. Now that's like the average age of players. Now you have players that are reaching 30 and still competing as players. So I think in general, you know, the more money involved has allowed people to sustain their careers as players for longer, because when you get to the age of like 22, 23, you're out of uni at that point, whatever, you can't really sit there and, you know, this is 10, 12 years ago. A lot of players that were great at that period of time had to hang up when they got to that age because they've got other priorities in life and they have to earn money to be able to sustain that.
And it's not going to be a dead cert that they're going to make it.
So exactly. So at that point in time, a lot of good players in Europe especially, like retired, stepped away from Call of Duty, but now it's much more of a viable career, but still, it's still such a small amount of players. You know, you've got 48 players in the league, you know, 12 coaches, you know, some teams have secondary coaches, but you're talking less than, you know, out of all the teams and all the players, you're talking like less than 100 people are like truly earning enough to like actually live. Obviously there's, you know, all the CDL staff and all these sort of people, but I'm talking specifically like players in team management, there's like probably less than 100 people that are actually earning like a full-time wage off Call of Duty esports, which is still, you know, in comparison
they'll be looking to the horizon as well, thinking that's not going to last, eh?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think for me, it's like that's kind of be one of the mental battles I've had over the years. It's like always sitting there like, oh, what happens if this just all disappears? You know, what happens if the favourite and just goes away? But I've thought that for the last like 10 years and it just kept going, so I just keep it going.
The thing is, everyone in sport will be the same, right?
Yeah.
You know, once again, I remember being like growing up and like your 30-year-old footballer seemed really old. Now people are getting much more fitter and they're playing into Ronaldo and he's nearly 40, right? I was going to ask you a quick question about what you said before though. So when you're saying about before you could be under 18 and compete, obviously as the spotlight's grown on that, people are probably saying, well, you know, you're not 18 so you can't compete, right? So there's probably a lot of good kids out there that are 14 years old that are really good, but they wouldn't be able to compete in COD until they're 18, right? So then I'm thinking, is there ways where teams can maybe keep an eye on, like, is there a score? How would you find a good player?
Yeah,
so is it all for there to see in the data, like for leaderboards, etc.? Could you point somebody and say, who is this guy?
So you need to be 18 to compete in like Call of Duty Challengers, which is like the equivalent of like the championship per se, like the tier below the top league. So you need to be 18, same thing CDL, but the ranked play system that's in the game. Obviously, you technically need to be 18 to buy the game. But a lot of kids who are under 18 will be playing the ranked play system. So there's even players like there's a player called Joe Deceives who's in the league now. He plays for Toronto Ultra. He basically was like known to be like one of the next best players when he was 17 years old. He was doing really well on this ranked play playlist, and then he kind of went from there. And then as soon as he turned 18, he was like a substitute player on one of the league teams, and then he went and just progressed, and now he's just about turned 20, and he's like one of the MVPs in the league. So like there is ways to scout these players younger. Again, it was a lot easier back in the day because they used to be a lot less strict in terms of you'd be able to compete at Call of Duty events from like the age of 14 or something like that back in the day. So you'd have a lot of these players coming through early and you'd get to see that talent emerging from an earlier age. Now it's obviously a bit more difficult. I'd say there's probably only like one or two players over the last like couple of years that have actually been touted to be next up when they turn 18. For the most part, it's like you get to the age of 18, you then start attending events, you then start making your way up the chain, you go to the Challengers event. Pretty much every single like Call of Duty League event has a Challengers event attached to it. So then you have like the coaches and managers of all these teams going to the Challengers event to watch all the kind of like up and coming players that have been on their radar and stuff like that. That gives them then an opportunity to like see not only how are they performing as individuals, but also seeing how they communicate and all these sort of things.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, and I suppose in a football, for example, go and watch a kid, and one guy will maybe see an attribute that he thinks is better. If for your side, what would you look for if you had to scout up and coming? What would you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. I think no player is the same, obviously, in a sense.
Do you mean the mentality is a big thing?
I think mentality is huge. You need, to know what your team might be missing as well.
Right.
I think, like, when you're at an event and you're seeing how a team can communicate, you can maybe see, okay, this guy's a bit of a quieter guy, like, he doesn't really communicate very strongly, but he's incredibly individually talented. Maybe your team might have, like, 3 very strong communicators anyway, so, like, having that player who's a bit more quiet isn't as much of an issue. On the other hand, you could be the opposite, where your team has struggles with communication, and then you're scouting these players, and you're like, okay, we need a strong communicator to come in.
So if things aren't going well, that's where you need people to step up and be talking, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. You need to basically, look for the gaps in your team and try and sort of find the piece for the puzzle for your specific team and your specific situation. For me, like when I've been in the Call of Duty League, I've always, made sure that I'm like keeping tabs on, the up and coming players, even when my team's having a lot of success, even when we're not expecting to make any team changes. You still need to keep tabs on the players coming through, because even if you're having success, there could be players that are coming through that are potentially still improvements to the team, So you always need to keep your ear to challengers and make sure you know who's next up. Just because your competition could snap up that player a couple of weeks before you, and then that next thing you know, you're kind of in a worse position.
But that's exciting as well. That must be a bit that excites you as well, that part, yeah?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I said, I've been doing this for years now, and it's still something I absolutely love doing. Don't take it for granted whatsoever. And yeah, I love it.
How do you look after, when you guys kind of grew up, when you talk about the golden age, there's probably a lot of things that you guys maybe weren't doing right. When you think back, okay, well, here you go. Think of Mark, the 14-year-old Mark playing, to what you would tell a 14-year-old now. What kind of tips that you would say, like, for your mental health, for... Okay, you're laughing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking there's so much, honestly.
We're Scottish people, don't look after ourselves anyway, right? But what do you think would be the kind of tips?
Leave your house, go for a walk, drink more water.
Yeah.
Don't eat rubbish all day, every day. Honestly, my diet I just didn't really... I think when you're young, you don't really think much about your diet. I think when I was like 16, 17, I was maybe a bit chubby, but I think when I turned like 18, the age of 18 to 21, I put a drastic amount of weight on. Just because I think when I was young, I was still like, you burn off playing football and you know what I mean? I was still doing things. But then when I became fully like sedentary and not doing anything but gaming, that was where I'd say you could see a steady decline in my individual performance over that period of time, I'd say. And I wish I'd thought about that earlier. And that's something that I'll like, you know, preach to players now as well. Is obviously they want to spend a lot of time playing the game, but sometimes there gets to a point where that extra like 2 hours that you're spending or hour isn't actually beneficial to your performance. If anything, it could become negative to your performance. So like, you know, go out, do something that's going to be positive. And I think that ultimately when you just purely spend every minute of every day playing the game, your whole life is revolved around the results of how you do in that game. So if you go and have a bad day at work and you know don't do well in practice, or you play a match and you lose, it feels like the world's crashing down on you, because that's the only thing that matters. Whereas I think that you definitely need to be really focused and you know want to win, but ultimately you need to be able to separate the two and have a bit of the ability to be like, okay, right, obviously we lost today, but I still had a positive day. I still went a walk, you know, ate clean. You know what I mean? Just have little small victories for yourself outside of the game, rather than just purely, you know, relying on the results. For me, that's been a big change in my mindset.
And I think when I can imagine that when I went down to the Commonwealth Games, I was looking after the girls' team, and I was trying to keep them G'd up, trying to keep them positive. It's just me off my own back, just trying to keep them positive, right? How much do you feel like that your job is the mindset of these guys and girls? You know, how much is it the mindset, do you think?
It's the mindset is everything. I think that when I first transitioned into coaching, I think that was one of the things where I just thought, okay, I'm just going to be purely thinking from a tactical perspective, giving them strategies and all that, and that was my big focus. But then I realised they actually understand, I understood when I was a player these things at a high level already, and obviously you do help with the tactics and all these sort of things as well, but the main thing is, again, just getting the best out of the players you've got and trusting them and their knowledge. And you can definitely put a lot of, you know, tactical analysis and stuff like that into it in practice and preparation, but on the game days, especially on match days, it's very much like, you know, you've got to trust the preparation that you've done and just ensure that they're in their best mentality going into it.
And one last thing I was going to talk to you about, so do you think how much from traditional sports, I mean, obviously we're talking about esports, right, and there's a lot of similarities, right, how much from traditional sports coaching have you taken into that? Are you looking at other sports and seeing how they look after players, and are there more and more people trying to bring that into esports?
Yeah, no, I'd definitely say so. There's a lot of players who, a lot of coaches, who are, you know, even myself, who are definitely trying to bring some things over from traditional sports. I think for me, it's like finding what's kind of, you know, replicable into esports. Obviously, there's not the big physical aspect, but physical well-being is still massively important. So yeah, I'm consistently learning. I think esports coaching in general, the biggest thing is that we're still in its infancy, and even though I've been doing this for like 6-7 years now, there's still so much to learn. There's still going to be so much to learn in 10, 20 years' time. Yeah. It's going to consistently evolve. So for me, even, you know, I think the 2021 year I was nominated Esports Coach of the Year. Nice. But ultimately, I still didn't be like, oh, I'm one of the best coaches in the world, because there's still so much further to go.
Brilliant. Honestly, I could talk to you all day. I think I do love Call of Duty. I always buy the new ones, but I think it's such a fast game. I was watching some of the Esports World Cup, and you're watching these guys play, and it's just
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't do well.
Nah. Listen, Mark, thank you very much, buddy. All the best with it, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, mate.